Imagine a global economic chess game where two giants, India and the USA, are locked in a high-stakes standoff. On one side, tariffs and trade disputes; on the other, allegations that the US is actively pushing companies out of India. Is this a strategic move, a defensive play, or something far more complex? Let's unravel this geopolitical and economic puzzle together. For decades, the global economic landscape has been defined by interconnected supply chains and free trade principles, fostering a sense of interdependence. However, recent years have seen a dramatic shift, with major powers re-evaluating these relationships in pursuit of national interests and economic sovereignty. This re-evaluation has set the stage for a new era of trade dynamics, challenging established norms. India, with its burgeoning economy, vast consumer market, and skilled workforce, has emerged as a critical player in this evolving global narrative. Its Make in India initiative, launched with ambitious goals, aims to transform the nation into a global manufacturing hub, attracting significant foreign direct investment and fostering indigenous production. This vision positions India as a formidable economic force. On the other side of the equation is the United States, a long-standing economic superpower increasingly focused on safeguarding its domestic industries and ensuring supply chain resilience. Post-pandemic, concerns over reliance on single manufacturing locations escalated, pushing Washington to prioritize reshoring efforts and diversify its economic partnerships. This strategic shift is at the heart of recent trade tensions. The trade relationship between India and the USA has always been multifaceted, marked by periods of cooperation and occasional friction. Both nations are significant trading partners, with bilateral trade reaching record highs, yet underlying structural issues and divergent policy priorities often lead to disputes over market access, tariffs, and intellectual property rights. It's a complex dance of partnership and competition. The concept of tariff wars is essentially a tit-for-tat imposition of duties on imported goods, often initiated when one country perceives unfair trade practices from another. These duties raise the cost of goods, making them less competitive and ideally encouraging domestic production, but they also risk escalating into broader economic conflict. It's a contentious tool in international trade. The recent tariff disputes between India and the US intensified significantly when the Trump administration removed India from the Generalized System of Preferences, or GSP, program. This move effectively stripped India of preferential duty-free access for many of its exports to the US, impacting sectors like textiles, engineering goods, and agricultural products. It was a clear signal of Washington's intent to recalibrate trade terms. India swiftly retaliated, imposing its own tariffs on a range of American imports, including agricultural products like almonds, walnuts, and apples, as well as certain steel and iron products. This reciprocal action aimed to assert India's economic sovereignty and put pressure on the US to reconsider its stance, creating a spiraling effect of duties that impacted businesses on both sides. This series of tariff impositions was part of a broader US strategy under the America First doctrine, which prioritized domestic job creation and sought to reduce trade deficits with major partners. The administration argued that certain countries, including India, were not providing equitable and reasonable access to their markets for American goods and services. For the US, specific concerns included India's high tariffs on certain American goods, data localization requirements that impacted US tech companies, and market access issues in sectors like medical devices and dairy. These long-standing grievances coalesced into the justification for the more aggressive trade measures seen in recent years. Meanwhile, India viewed the US actions as unfair and unilateral, arguing that its tariffs were within WTO limits and necessary to protect nascent domestic industries and a large agricultural sector. New Delhi emphasized that developing nations require certain policy flexibilities to foster economic growth and employment. The World Trade Organization, WTO, became the battleground for many of these disputes. Both India and the US have filed complaints against each other's tariff actions, initiating formal dispute settlement processes. While these mechanisms aim to resolve trade disagreements peacefully, the pace can be slow, and outcomes are often contested, leaving much uncertainty. This brings us to the core allegation: is the USA forcing companies to stop production in India? It's crucial to understand that direct force in the form of explicit government orders is unlikely. Instead, the pressure manifests through a nuanced combination of incentives, disincentives, regulatory changes, and strategic geopolitical messaging. One primary driver behind U.S. policy is the desire to diversify supply chains away from over-reliance on any single nation, particularly China. The COVID-19 pandemic starkly exposed vulnerabilities in global supply networks, prompting a strategic push for greater resilience and domestic production capacity. India, while a growing market, is also seen through this lens. The U.S. government offers significant incentives for companies to reshore manufacturing operations or invest in allied nations closer to home. These include tax breaks, subsidies, grants, and streamlined regulatory processes, making domestic or nearshore production financially more attractive than maintaining operations in distant countries like India. Another subtle form of pressure comes through heightened scrutiny of intellectual property rights and data security. While India has made strides in these areas, concerns from U.S. companies about IP theft or stringent data localization laws can make them reconsider their long-term investment strategies. These concerns, whether justified or not, can subtly push companies away. Furthermore, as India's manufacturing capabilities grow, it inevitably becomes a direct competitor to some U.S. industries. While the U.S. supports Make in India in principle, especially as an alternative to China, an overly competitive Indian market, particularly in sectors where the U.S. aims to maintain dominance, could lead to subtle disincentives for U.S. companies. Geopolitical considerations also play a significant role. The U.S. often uses economic leverage as part of its broader foreign policy objectives. While India is a strategic partner, trade disputes can become tools to exert influence or secure concessions on other fronts, directly impacting the calculus for U.S. companies operating in India. Now, let's look at India's perspective. The Make in India campaign is central to its economic vision, aiming to boost local manufacturing, create jobs, and reduce import dependency. The government actively encourages foreign companies to establish production facilities within the country through various incentives and policy reforms. India's production-linked incentive (PLI) schemes are a prime example of its strategy to attract manufacturing. These schemes offer financial incentives on incremental sales for products manufactured in India, across various sectors like electronics, pharmaceuticals, and automobiles. This has been a powerful magnet for global players. Despite the U.S. pressure, many American companies continue to invest heavily in India, drawn by its massive consumer base, competitive labor costs, and a growing talent pool. Companies like Apple, Google, and Amazon are expanding their footprint, indicating that the market opportunities often outweigh the trade frictions. However, companies operating in India also face their own set of challenges, regardless of U.S. pressure. These include bureaucratic hurdles, infrastructure bottlenecks, and navigating a complex regulatory environment. These operational realities often factor more heavily into investment decisions than direct governmental pressures. So, is the U.S. truly forcing companies out? It's more accurate to say the U.S. is creating a policy environment that incentivizes reshoring or investing in other preferred geographies, while simultaneously raising the cost or increasing the scrutiny of operations in certain countries, including India. The decision ultimately rests with the private companies weighing their options. The long-term implications of these tariff wars are significant for both economies. For India, a sustained period of trade friction could impact its export-oriented industries, slow down foreign investment, and potentially reduce job creation, especially in sectors heavily reliant on U.S. markets. For the U.S., imposing tariffs and pushing companies to relocate also carries risks. It could lead to higher consumer prices due to reduced competition and increased production costs, and potentially alienate a key strategic partner like India, complicating broader geopolitical objectives. Globally, these protectionist measures can disrupt established trade flows, create uncertainty for businesses, and potentially undermine the rules-based multilateral trading system. The ripple effects can be felt across various industries and nations, impacting global growth prospects. Despite the trade spats, the strategic partnership between India and the U.S. remains robust, driven by shared democratic values and a converging interest in countering rising geopolitical challenges. This broader strategic alignment often acts as a moderating force, preventing economic disputes from fully derailing the relationship. Looking ahead, a resolution to the tariff wars would likely involve complex negotiations, focusing on market access, intellectual property, and reciprocal tariff reductions. Both nations would need to find common ground that addresses their respective domestic priorities while fostering a more balanced trade relationship. The recent visit of Indian Prime Minister Modi to the US, and President Biden's subsequent engagement, signaled a renewed commitment to strengthening bilateral ties, including economic cooperation. These high-level dialogues are crucial for de-escalating trade tensions and building trust. For companies caught in the middle, adapting to this dynamic environment is key. This includes diversifying their own supply chains, exploring new markets, and investing in advanced technologies to enhance efficiency and competitiveness, regardless of where they choose to produce. India's continued focus on improving its ease of doing business rankings, streamlining regulations, and investing in infrastructure will be crucial in attracting and retaining foreign investment, irrespective of external pressures. A stable and predictable policy environment is paramount. The tech sector, in particular, has seen both immense growth and significant friction. While US tech giants eye India's massive digital consumer base, concerns around data localization, privacy laws, and market access for digital services continue to be points of contention. US companies manufacturing in India, particularly those serving the Indian domestic market, are less likely to be forced out. Their presence aligns with India's Make in India goals, and the sheer market opportunity often outweighs the complexities of US-India trade disputes. However, companies primarily using India as an export base for US markets face greater scrutiny and the direct impact of tariffs. Their decision to stay or leave hinges more critically on the resolution of trade disputes and the long-term viability of their export model. The global semiconductor industry is a prime example of this complex dynamic. The US is pushing for reshoring chip manufacturing, while India is aggressively trying to attract major foundries. This creates a fascinating dance between US policy goals and India's manufacturing ambitions. The narrative of the US forcing companies out of India often oversimplifies a much more intricate interplay of factors. It's a blend of economic competition, geopolitical strategy, domestic policy priorities, and the individual business calculations of global corporations. India's strategic response to these pressures includes diversifying its trade partnerships, strengthening ties with other major economies in Europe, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. Reducing dependence on any single market enhances its resilience against external economic pressures. The future of India-US trade relations will likely involve continued competition in some sectors, balanced by robust cooperation in others, particularly in defense, technology, and strategic areas. Economic friction is a part of any large relationship, but the underlying strategic alignment is paramount. For investors, understanding these nuanced dynamics is key. While the headlines might suggest conflict, the reality on the ground for many companies is a balance of opportunities and challenges. Risk assessment must go beyond simple narratives and delve into specific sector analysis. The resilience of global supply chains post-COVID has led to a focus on friendshoring or ally shoring, where countries prefer sourcing from politically aligned nations. India, as a democratic partner of the US, benefits from this strategy, despite the existing trade disputes. India's massive domestic consumption market is a powerful counterargument to any external pressure to cease production. For many companies, the primary reason to be in India is to serve its billion-plus population, a market opportunity unmatched by many other regions. Ultimately, the narrative of the US forcing companies out of India is an oversimplification. It's a complex economic interplay driven by US domestic policy, global supply chain resilience efforts, and India's own ambitious Make in India push. Companies make their own strategic decisions. The path forward for India and the USA involves continued dialogue, finding areas of mutual benefit, and navigating disagreements through established channels. Both nations recognize the strategic importance of their relationship, even amidst economic friction. The underlying trend of economic nationalism and protectionism is not unique to the India-US dynamic, it's a global phenomenon shaping trade relations everywhere. Understanding this broader context helps in analyzing specific bilateral disputes. In conclusion, while there are significant trade disputes and strategic incentives pushing some companies to reconsider global manufacturing footprints, the idea of the US directly forcing companies out of India lacks concrete evidence. It's more about strategic influence and market dynamics. The true story is one of two economic powers navigating a complex global landscape, each pursuing its national interests while trying to maintain a vital strategic partnership. The future of India-US trade will be defined by their ability to balance competition with crucial cooperation. And that wraps up our deep dive into the complex web of India-US trade relations and the truth behind the forcing companies out narrative. If you found this analysis insightful and thought-provoking, please hit that like button, share this video with anyone who'd benefit, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth geopolitical and economic breakdowns. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.